So, back in 2022, a group of Christian leaders from all over the world got together to try and tackle some of the biggest problems we're facing. They showed up ready to talk about action, about doing things. But they left with a conclusion that was, well, surprising and a whole lot deeper. Okay, let's get into this really fascinating story of a shift from common tasks to doctrinal dialogue.
I mean, this is the big question, right? When you're staring down the barrel of war, climate change, and massive injustice, can a council of churches actually move the needle? The stakes are just enormous, and that's exactly what was on the table.
The place where this all went down was the 11th Assembly of the World Council of Churches. You might see it called the WCC. It was the first time in 9 whole years that these really diverse faith leaders were all in one room, trying to figure out a united path forward.
And look at their agenda. This was not abstract stuff. They were focused on the most pressing crises of our time. They wanted to figure out what they could actually do together about the war in Ukraine, the climate emergency that's just getting worse, and these deep, painful social injustices.
Okay, but to really get what happened next, you have to understand this deep-rooted tension that's right at the heart of this whole movement. For more than a century, it's been pulled in 2 different directions by 2 distinct and sometimes clashing ideas.
You can think of them as the 2 souls of the organization. On one side, you've got work and life. That's the practical, hands-on, doing part of faith, all about social action and getting stuff done together. But on the other side, you have faith and order. That's the believing part. It's focused on figuring out doctrinal unity, a shared theology. For decades, these 2 ideas have been in this delicate, sometimes tricky balance.
In this house analogy, it's just perfect. Work and life is all the stuff you can see. Arranging the furniture, painting the walls, making a house a place you can live in. But faith and order? That's the concrete foundation holding the whole thing up. And you just can't have a house that lasts without a solid base. The big question has always been, which one do you focus on first?
So at first, the assembly in Germany was all about decorating the rooms, taking that practical action. But as the conversations got going, something started to shift, and shift dramatically. They started looking down, at the foundation. Here's what happened. As soon as they tried to agree on how to respond to the war, or what to do about the climate crisis, they just hit a wall. Different groups had totally different ideas about what was right, what was just, what their actual moral duty was. The practical talk just ended up exposing these really deep ethical disagreements.
You can almost map out the light bulb moment for them. They started at step 1. Let's talk about what to do. That led them straight into step 2. Oh, wait, we fundamentally disagree on what's right and wrong here. And that forced them to the huge insight in step 3. You can't have shared action if you don't have some kind of shared belief to stand on. And this single phrase, it just perfectly captures the entire arc of the assembly. They showed up thinking about what to do, but they left knowing that first they had to really talk about what they believe. The way forward wasn't just through more action. It had to start with dialogue. So what was the big conclusion? Where did this massive realization actually lead them? Well, it led to a really powerful and clear call for a whole new kind of conversation. At the end of the day, the assembly decided that the work and life approach, just focusing on doing things together, had kind of reached its limit. To really move forward as one, they had to get intentional about strengthening the faith and order side of their identity, because action comes from belief. And if their beliefs weren't aligned, their actions were never going to be either.
And they got super specific about it. This wasn't some vague call for dialogue. They pointed to the exact foundational issues that needed urgent theological work. Things like, what's our shared understanding of creation in the middle of a climate crisis? What does peace actually mean? Can we even find a common basis for ethics? What is the church, really? And how do we agree on how to read our own sacred texts? These are the huge questions they have to wrestle with now.
And so we're right back at our house analogy. The assembly basically put down the paintbrushes, dropped the hammers, walked down to the basement, and decided it was time to check the foundation for cracks. They realized that no amount of beautiful decorating is going to save a house that's built on a shaky base.
Now you might be thinking, okay, this is some interesting internal church politics, but the conclusion they reached has massive, real-world implications. So let's talk about why this shift from action back to belief really matters.
This quote from the analysis of the assembly, it just nails it. Unity isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling. Real, lasting unity, the kind that can actually stand up to global crises, is guaranteed by a shared understanding of core beliefs. It's the engine that drives everything else.
So here it is, the ultimate takeaway for anyone who hopes that faith communities can help solve some of these global problems. The World Council of Churches figured out, through their own journey, that good intentions and a to-do list just aren't enough. To be a truly effective force for good in the world, a group needs a coherent, shared worldview that actually informs and drives every single thing they do.
And that leaves us with a really provocative final thought. This was the conclusion reached by one of the world's biggest Christian organizations, but the question applies so much more broadly, doesn't it? And our world, which feels more divided every day, is finding that common ground of belief, whether it's theological, philosophical, or ethical. Is that the essential and maybe the only real path to meaningful, unified action?